Welcome to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a left-wing podcast on politics, media, culture, and whatever we feel like talking about. I'm your first co-host, Alex Rashiotis.
I am your second this week co-host, and my name is Aidan Galligan.
Hey, I'm Jason Rashiotis. I'm here too.
Okay. Well, we have...
Fun formalities.
All right.
Yeah, we're on like episode 4 now. I think it's about time.
Yeah, we've got our shit together, which means
Rolling.
we don't have to.
Okay.
So, as has become more or less tradition, we are going to be looking over some news articles, but specifically we're going to be looking over the headlines, because as we've discussed before, that's all most Americans read. And we're going to start taking some creative liberties to figure out what on earth they mean. I will start with the bad ones, but unlike some previous episodes, I've got a few good ones too. Maybe we can end on a sweet note.
Impossible.
Let's start with a kind of a silly but also bad one. This is from The Hill. Wyoming GOP leaders say they no longer recognize Cheney as a party member. They can't recognize her.
Is
Or
it the Lady Cheney?
I
Or
think
the
they're
Big
talking
Dick
about...
Cheney?
I'm pretty sure they're talking about Liz Cheney.
I assume so, since there's all that hubbub about removing her.
Isn't she still in office though?
Yeah, she is.
So what do they mean? No longer recognize her? Is this like an official thing? Are they what's it referred to? Like because they already stripped her of all the committee shit. Are they? Fuck, what do they call that? Not like hazarding, like
Excommunication.
censuring.
That's what it feels like, right?
Yeah. You are no longer part of our conservative cult to our specifications.
This is just Chuck Todd's argument, honestly, that we talked about in the previous episode. Time for Cheney to become a moderate Republican and get her own party structured so where she can be recognized there.
Yeah, it's like Dave Chappelle's racial draft. Like, goodbye, monster trucks, hello limos. Like it's back to that idea. Like it's just trying to sort them into the respectable and non-respectable Republicans.
But this is over her just saying, I don't think Biden stole the election.
Probably, yeah. That would be my guess, though I don't know for sure.
Man, this is foreboding. I am not liking the direction that things are heading.
Do you remember in the Soviet Union when they'd be like, they'd officially like oust some Politburo member because he was like considered to have offended the wrong
because
he
like scuffed Stalin's shoe on the hallway or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or he like didn't laugh at his joke loud enough. And so he would get like, thrown to the wolves. It's like that's how this reads to me. Like you are out of the not only just out of the cult, like you're out of the political apparatus as far as they're concerned, which is curious considering that I think she outranks them, considering what she was elected to compared to state representatives. So
whatever, it's funny. I'm all for people who are products of nepotism losing. But I do find it funny, and I have maintained this opinion for a long time, that because our collective memories are so short, we always think we're like big dick, awesome, best country in the world. But if you consider the time frame from when the Soviet Union fell to where America is now falling, 30, 40 years, 30 years, really. That's barely even more than what Jefferson considered like a political generation. So, and democracy that well, when we're only surviving 30 years more than the Soviet Union system could. Like, we're not doing great. We suffer from source extraction that's not finite. And yet we think we're just like magically going to get past it because capitalism's magic. I just find it funny that people, their brain will explode if we acknowledge, like, hey, guess what? We're kind of like the Soviet Union. We're just as useless and fucked up as them, and politically, paralyzed as them.
I do think it's interesting that they're almost trying to like misgender her. Like they're trying to like aggressively assert an identity against her that like conflicts with reality. Like she's still a Republican. She's an elected Republican. I don't think they even have the power to do anything about that. It's like they're trying to do like this culture war canceling kind of way of handling her, which is to say like we can't actually pull her out of office. So we're just going to like defame her by claiming she's not the thing she clearly is.
Of course. The right wing invented that shit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is what America does about Taiwan, and what America does about Cuba, and what America, like, this is what we did about when Trump wanted to move the capital, the thing of the either our not the capital, but like the where do we have diplomats in Israel? Like we're gonna move it to this place. Like we just love recognizing or unrecognizing places in a totally unofficial, non-legal capacity.
Yeah, it just feels like a, unfortunately, much more unpleasant version of, yeah, you can't sit with the cool kids anymore. Like it doesn't seem to have much meaning besides the fact that it's another symbol of where things are going culturally with the Republican Party. But none of that has exactly been wreathed in shadows for quite some time. So yeah, it's pretty absurd. It shows just how petty, I guess, the Wyoming GOP is. But it's certainly not surprising. I don't feel any sympathy for Liz Cheney, as I can't say I was especially fond of her more staid and true conservative values to begin with. But I guess she made the news, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting to me about this is that Dick Cheney was, for all intents and purposes, president for 8 years, because he more or less controlled and dictated what policy was going to be in many key areas for Bush. And in hindsight, they don't even really deny this. It's just kind of like Bush wanted someone who would take care of shit for him so he could fuck around. So Cheney was as close to being a president as you can get without formally being a president. He was the kind of Palpatine behind
Well,
the seat.
we have to. To be fair, in history, there are people who are actually closer. Like,
Well, he's extremely close.
Like, was it Woodrow Wilson's
yeah,
wife? Or like,
yeah, sure. Woodrow Wilson's wife putting
Eleanor Roosevelt
putting her hand up her paralyzed husband's ass and playing him like a puppet, sure. But other than that, it's as close as a conscious president can be puppeted.
It was more just an acknowledged diffusion of responsibility because Bush didn't want to actually take care of big things,
and because Cheney was just much more domineering and assertive personality. But Cheney was like king shit of the GOP for almost 8 years minimum. I mean, he was already important even before that. And his daughter, as you say, is a nepotistic follow-up who again has never had a fucking good
They're
idea.
Just the quieter McCains, like, it's not that
and somehow more evil, but like they don't have any good political ideas. It should be mentioned, this is not a heroic, dying on a hill to protect democracy. She's just trying to make her political stake, which is a little different than the Trump political stake, to reclaim some sort of relevance in the dying apparatus of the party more generally. But I do think it's notable that for all the people saying like we need to inch away from Trump, right? We need to remind ourselves that the Republican Party somehow isn't just the Trump party. That even 6+ months after Trump is out of office, after losing an election, the people are getting like purged or minimized or ridiculed for not being Trump Republicans. We are very much still in the zeitgeist of you're either a Trump Republican or you're not. And the fact that the Trump Republicans seem to still be pretty clearly the dominant force of the party, I don't even think that's really that ambiguous. Should really tell you everything you need to know about all these other articles that are saying like, oh, it's still good. Maybe if all those never Trumpers, it's like, no, they've lost.
Well, that's exactly right. And Liz Cheney is the example of libs being like, see, look, we're inching away from Trump. But the thing that scares me is that 20 years ago, obviously Dick Cheney's like, yes, we're the evil ones. We're in this for greed and power. But today, modern Republicans who are Trump Republicans, who are also conspiracy theorists, think they're the good guys. And if you look at like fiction, do the Uruk-hai like think they're the good guys in the story? No, they know they're evil. But the modern day conspiracy theorist always has to be the hero because they're uncovering the truth, because they're in the Da Vinci Code, because they can see the demons around them. That blows my mind today, because I can imagine some deluded libs who are like, yeah, we're the heroes, we're trying to save capitalism, save the world. But conservatives used to acknowledge that they're evil. And the big lie is not that Trump, secretly won the election. The big lie is that they're redeemable. And so they're excising someone who arguably was trying to be like, no, let's be the party of honesty and just evil like we used to be. Like, no, we have to be delusional. Because only by being delusional can we pretend we're still good. Can we pretend we're still righteous?
What's interesting is that in the Bush administration, you had both at the same time. Bush, W. Bush would be going like, They hate us because our freedoms. Like he would be giving the America's still good pitch about like why our wars are justified.
Yeah, but in the
And then
meantime, Cheney would be investing in
that's what I was gonna
Halliburton
say.
and IBM.
Right. Cheney would be right in the background, be like, we do what the fuck we need to do because we're realists and fuck everyone but America, right? So like they had both almost. Like they were trying to make space in their administration for both the extreme psychotic, like realist hawks and the somewhat softer psychotic,
right? They had
moralizing hawks.
They had the political savvy to put on the facade still,
Yeah,
and market themselves as the good guys,
yeah,
and acknowledging deep down they were doing the evil. But modern Republicans don't acknowledge that second part.
yeah. It is interesting that it's become more fanatically cult-like, even than it used to be, which was already super cult-like.
Well, because that's the only natural progression that makes sense there. It's not teleological, but obviously the work's been put in to turn them fascist, and that's what fascism is about.
It's the ideological direction they have been driving toward for decades.
Since Nixon and Reagan, easily.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. What do you think will happen? Let's assume that Trump runs again and loses the election, or even more than that, let's assume he passes away. What do you think happens to
both those are the two most likely options? I should just point out.
Yeah,
it's fine.
So let's assume that Trump is not around to pretend that he lost a second election anymore, that he's just not here. What do you think happens? Obviously, elements of the ideology survive, the movement towards fascism survives, but what form do you think it takes, and do you think it maintains kind of the cult-like atmosphere and ethos, or do you think it's more of goes back to kind of, I don't know, politically defined?
I have the perfect prediction for this.
Even further right than it was before. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like Dr. Manhattan, and that I cannot reach into the future. It's all hazy and radioactive, and so I can't exactly tell what's going to happen. But here's my prediction. The Republican Party will break into the Sunni and Shia sects. Because there'll be those who are like, oh, I am the direct lineage of Trump. I'm Donald Trump Jr. I'm his other shitty son. I'm his shitty daughter. I'm his fourth other shitty daughter. And then there's the other people who are like, no, it's not about direct lineage. It's about insane ideology. So then you have all the loser Trump surrogates and people who, barnacles that grabbed onto his coattails for the last 4 years. So you have all these people that he's said, oh, you should run for office. In fact, I was going to link an article about linking to it later. But like people like Herschel Walker are now running for Senate seat. All these insane people, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Boebert, all these people will try and say we're the ideological Trump of the party, and they'll all be all the direct blood lineage. We're like, no, we want to take over the party because we have the good blood. So I genuinely imagine like Sunni Shia violence after the death of Muhammad.
Do you think that will be as compelling to the population that holds on to Trump and raises them up in such a almost messiah position?
Absolutely. It's keeping up with the Kardashians. People have to pick a side. I'm either Team Eddie or Team whatever the fucking the werewolf kid. Like, yes, this is the drama they've all been waiting for. This is the juicy red meat that they like to turn into TV for. That'll keep it going. It won't ever end. Things don't end, Aiden. Things only continue and transform and become tumors.
I'd like to point out that, the last time we had an extremely large ideological realignment, which was the Blue Dog Democrats,
the 50s and 60s.
Explicitly white supremacist, racist, segregationist wing of the Democratic Party, almost entirely, other than maybe Joe Biden, fell off and left the party.
He's like, where'd all my friends go, man?
Sometimes you gotta segregate. But like almost all of them had been. I mean, they call Blue Dog Democrats. It was like literally like, or Yellow Dog Democrats, whatever the fuck they're called, because they would vote for a dog over a Republican. Like they openly despised the Republican Party, and 30 years later they were all Republicans. So it should be noted that given that we have a two-party system, I almost guarantee you that the non-Trump Republicans just become Democrats.
Yeah,
they just become Democrats. They just become the even further right wing of the Democratic Party.
And a perfect example of this is someone like Joe Manchin, who, because West Virginia, for much of its history, has been solid blue, many politicians over the last 30, 40 years had to run as Democrats in West Virginia because those are the only people who'd win elections, even if they were conservatives. So we get to hold on to all these, it's like the tail and feet bones in Wales. It's like these vestigial party identifiers that don't match people's actual ideologies. We have Mansions as this excuse of conservatives who get to hold back Democrats. But in order to win, he had to run as a Democrat 30 years ago. The same will be true of, as Alex is predicting, the future political realignments.
Speaking of political realignments, not to be outdone by how stupid the GOP have been acting, we have a new article on NewJersey.com. Cory Booker goes viral ridiculing scurrilous accusation that Democrats want to defund police.
Yeah, I saw this video. Yeah.
I mean, is this a typo, or is he just think he's smarter than he is, or is he smarter than me? Shouldn't it be like spurious accusation?
I mean, it's
scurrilous.
It's a super archaic way of saying the same.
Yeah, same outcome.
He's trying to sound smarter.
He just in his programming went right into his thesaurus and looked.
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
a bigger, more out of touch word to say the exact same thing?
Yeah. So here we have I believe, partially African American politician, openly mocking, as absurd to the point of being farce, the idea that the Democratic Party, literally anyone in the Democratic Party leadership, wants to act upon one of the most popular and important movements in recent years about protecting the lives of African Americans.
Yeah, but he's right, because the party doesn't. The people do. And we've talked about this a bunch of times already. Like, the parties don't reflect what the public wants. Even on the right, the party doesn't enact policies and make changes and put forward legislation and even support concepts that the party members who vote for it want. So I am totally unsurprised, unflapped. This is what a T800 would say. Of course.
But I mean, there's not even the hesitation to go, let me continue to pretend like some of us support this to appease the, either the radicals in the party or the population of voters who overwhelmingly wanted change in this regard, and who clearly were not being served by the pathetic, tepid, like, body cams type shit that the Obama administration was trying to do.
Yeah, but he's not some fucking grassroots dude. Like, why would we expect him to support this? He's not Bernie. And even people like Bernie were like, eh. Most people are not most people in power are not on board with defunding the police or reallocating the resources or changing their training measurements or changing who responds to, psychological calls. They don't give a fuck. To them, this is like petty bullshit. This is not a daily issue for them. So they don't see it as a pressing political concern.
It's since we're also kind of talking about, how the media chooses to frame these events that happen. It also, like, I know this was, Alex, where did this particular headline come from? NewJersey.com?
NewJersey.com, yeah, I could like both.
I'm pretty sure I saw it on a bunch of other websites as well.
Yep.
Ones that I've at least visited in my own volition from time to time. And you just know that none of them, at least none of the mainstream ones, shared this. This didn't go viral because of how baldly Cory Booker was spitting in the face of and dashing whatever faint hopes
on the bald.
Hundreds of thousands of activists, millions of activists across America and the world have put their bodies at risk trying to push for, and that so many Americans fervently believe and hope for, especially, yes, minority communities. No, they shared it because he was being sassy. It's I think beyond kind of the moral failing of the Democratic Party and Cory Booker. It also just emphasizes like how completely clueless and spineless so many websites and publications are. I know they operate because of either their own principles sometimes, but also because they are companies in a capitalist society that they need to do what they need to do, or believe that they need to do what they need to do to get clicks and make money. But if they're going to share this and they're a news site, the news should be the complete moral failing. It shouldn't be, wow, he clapped back at Tommy Tuberville. And also, doesn't Tommy Tuberville have a funny name? But that's all we get. That's all we get.
That is, I saw several versions because I was looking at the expanded.
Yeah, but the irony is
verse.
this is more like Tommy YouTuberville. This is the comment section. We are in the toxic tar pits of the internet. That's what journalism has become. And also, listener, if you're surprised by any of this, I want you to remember and reflect on your knowledge of American history. The political parties exist to protect property rights and disputes and claims by those with property. The police are a direct creation of that system. Police exist to protect property rights and to keep people peaceful who would want to change things in a non-legal fashion. That's what this is all about. The police, during all the George Floyd protests, people were like, we want to destroy property because that's what flies in the face of police's existence. That's what they exist to protect. And the the politicians in power exist for those same reasons, to maintain and preserve property rights and money rights. And the courts exist to play out all those property disputes. So this is totally unsurprising if you remember that the sole existence and purpose of police and politicians is to preserve property and maintain the status quo. Their job is not to be technocrats who simply pass our democratically chosen policies. They are representatives who are chosen because they know better than us and will make decisions better than the public according to them.
Yeah, I think it's not surprising, or at least shouldn't be surprising to anyone who knows who Cory Booker is or what the Democratic Party in the last several years has been up to, at least, that he would absolutely try to tack as far to the right as possible on this question. Least of all for his personal politics, but of course, as you say, because of the overwhelming trend of politicians to support the status quo and the police that maintain it. But what's funny to me about this premise is basically we've already seen and we will continue to see all these articles about, like, now that the Democrats have control again, we can start making great strides on these, left-wing issues or these popular issues. Like, to me, it's just a reminder, like, oh no, by the way, that was all absolute horseshit. We couldn't give less of a fuck. Fuck you. We are in power now.
Of course.
We will not do a single thing you wanted. In fact, we will actively ridicule the things you want and, like, jerk off on Republicans because we have power now. Like, that's what this article basically is. Like, there's no we have a different program that's super great that's somehow going to do something. It's just using it, as Ed was mentioning, as like a punchline to own the Republicans now, because the Republicans thought that the Democrats had more principles. The Democrats are like, eat shit, we don't. You thought we had principles? Suck on this. Like, that's the entire article.
This is also bipartisan, because this is what the Trump political movement is the exact same thing as. Oh, look, the wacky grassroots conservative won. Do what he's doing. Oh, look, the old establishment Democrat who's conservative won. Do what he's doing. Cory Booker's just following the Biden manual because that's what the Democratic Party feels will win, because it did win. If Bernie won, I guarantee you Booker would be saying, doing the whole speech in Spanish, and two, supporting some tepid left-wing shit, because they're just leeches. They just follow what's in the political zeitgeist.
This is the equivalent of the black guy with the mustache meme where he's tapping his forehead and he goes like, can't get owned for being left-wing if we're not left-wing.
Exactly.
Like, that's their entire thing. That's the entire article. What is successful,
follow that model. Even if that changes every 4 years, they just follow what won. Everyone's just doing the Biden playbook now because they're convinced it won on its own merits. Everyone was doing the Trump playbook because they were convinced it won on its own merits.
They forgot that they rigged it.
Zero consideration for the actual political moment we were living through.
Yeah, it's just one of those, unsurprising, but still not great.
In fact, articles like this actually, they don't make me lose faith. They actually, for me, are evidence that I'm correct. They're more evidence to confirm my worldview and my biases, which I don't think is necessarily good, but it's just sad because they turn out to be true. This is literal evidence about how the political parties operate that demonstrates to me they can't be trusted or used or efficient or taken over. They have to be replaced.
Yeah, I agree. I think best case it could be galvanizing. Worst case it's just neutral. Like, at the very least he didn't like chuck in at the end there. And also, I think bail should exist forever and be doubled for every black person in America.
Tupac.
But I mean, to me, this is laughable because defunding the police was already the neutered version of abolishing the police. Like, we're once again multiple steps deep in the back down
Yeah.
And now we're super hard back downing the previous back down. Eventually, it's just going to be Democrats say it's absurd that they don't want to increase the budget even more than the Republicans want to increase the budget. Like the back down is going to become so absurd that it just becomes further right than the Republicans ever even wanted, just to prove how big their dicks are. Anyway, speaking of questionable racial takes, this one's not necessarily explicitly wrong, but when you consider the political climate in the United States right now, this article from the Daily Mail UK.
Daily Mail's real bad, Alex.
The number of white people in the US has declined for the first time in history, while Hispanic and Asian populations grew, according to census report.
So I also saw this headline. I didn't read anything about it, but I saw it, I think, on Twitter. But it also reminds me of an article that I didn't end up sharing last time, which was basically, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was basically saying that more and more super wealthy Americans are revoking their citizenship and fleeing America. So
to go live in the other 5 white places to survive the apocalypse.
Yeah, and it was almost certainly about tax burden or something like that. So all I'll say is maybe we're not losing our best.
It's one of those things that, like, sometimes we pick apart headlines because they're incredibly stupid or because they're incredibly manipulative. I don't think that that's necessarily the case here, but when you consider that there's an incredibly prevalent right-wing, basically far-right, like fascist myth.
I think this one's manipulative.
Of white genocide, which is this idea that white people are essentially being demographically erased by being outbred by non-white people, which
by
is
the
again
masses, the unwashed masses,
right? Which is explicitly a white supremacist idea, which is this absurd idea that like white people need to have a breeding competition with the lessers so that they can maintain their dominance of the world order. Which they're really close to losing that.
Mostly religious argument.
Yeah, it's an extremely gross, extremely creepy current in the American right wing, which used to be like a little fringy. Now it's just mainstream. Now it's just like boilerplate Republican ideology. I mean, you've got multiple prominent Republican Congress people openly endorsing these arguments all the time.
Yeah, I think basically just to echo what you're saying, I think absent context, this could just be seen as an interesting fact. But considering the cultural context that we're living in, it's hard not to feel like it's some kind of, I guess, not quite agit skew fact. I don't know how to put it, but yeah, it's hard to look at and not immediately think about the thousands of angry pundits who will be fear-mongering with it.
Daily Mail's England, correct?
Yeah.
So the reason I think this is pretty manipulative is because, as we all know about the census, this is self-reported. So this is not like we've studied we've pulled out the skull measuring tools and figured out there's fewer white people. This is fewer people identifying as white as in the previous census,
right,
and more people identifying as Hispanic and Asian in the census. I'd be totally unsurprised if it's like the studies done in Brazil where it's people who look lighter skin, like I'm black, and people who are dark skin, like I'm white though, I need to go to college. Like this is just human perception, self-perception,
right?
And they're reporting this as if it's like NASA data about how to escape orbit.
Yeah, and I think that is actually one of the more manipulative parts of the headline, which is the way it's asserted makes it sound like race is a scientific concept, whereas race is a cultural concept.
The white bloc is somehow losing because of,
right,
as is well understood, falling birth rates, access to retirements, and people buying dogs instead of having kids, getting higher paying jobs that require more hours so they have fewer kids, drops in religious belief because, or increase in preventative pregnancy use tools like condoms. All these things that we know are real explanatory factors for why people in like the first world have declining birth rates. They're like, nah, we're being outbred by the Mongols.
Well, it should be mentioned that there are both wealth-based reasons why people stop having children and poverty-based reasons why people stop having children. When you're extremely wealthy and you have access to birth control and you have access to a comfortable life and you can, you don't feel the need to have children.
The idiocracy argument.
You're satisfied without it. Then a lot of people in those conditions have fewer children. Not necessarily none, but they're much more likely to have one than two or 5,
Yeah, and if
And
you bear that out across a giant population, the
right.
numbers start to drop.
So part of the fact that, white people in especially the United States are having fewer children than before is because affluence reduces the overall numbers of children that people tend to have. But interestingly, there's also cases where economic deprivation can reduce the number of children they have, or at least delay it, specifically because the current breeding age population of the United States is mostly you know, very, very beginnings of the Zoomers or whatever the fuck they're called, and the millennials. Well, they don't have any money, and they don't have homes, and they're like, there's a higher level of being single and alone than there's ever been in like human history.
As we talked about previously with like COVID delaying schooling and just saving, the same is true just in general. That people in the 25 to 39 reproducing bracket are poorer, less enfranchised, have less property, and are more fleeting in their travel and their settling than previous generations.
So what we basically see is a pausing, if not indefinitely. Some of them may never have children, but tons of people are not having children right now because the economy is so bad and their personal finances are so bad and their ability to find partners and hold on to partners is so bad. They'll of course not having as many kids. The population overall is slowing down for that reason, and that's even further exacerbated, obviously, by COVID. So we're basically seeing a completely unsurprising demographic shift, with the people at the top having fewer children by choice, and the people it's sort of the middle bottom, that sort of lower middle class where so many people are now residing, uh, not feeling they can afford to have children. So we have neither the extreme poverty where people tend to have lots of kids just to like make sure they can all work to support the family, nor that kind of comfortable middle class 50s America where you can just kind of have baby boom and afford it. Neither of those conditions are really present right now.
Exactly. This is racial Reaganomics. This is, well, we saw the baby boomer generation. Why aren't we maintaining that level of white growth?
Right.
Like, the idea that capitalism would just grow forever. It's just infinite resources. Why aren't the white people just growing in population forever? Because it's not how growth works. It's not how reproduction works. It's not how anything works. It's not how any resource management works.
Yeah. It's also interesting, I think, to if you're taking the headline at its word, that at least as I understand it, historically and especially with this recent, maybe not especially, but perhaps most newsworthy with this recent census, the 2020 census, there were very public efforts to prevent underserved communities from participating in it. Some of which were struck down, but probably still had effects. But also in general, the census has had trouble reaching and engaging with those in underserved and poor communities. So it's, which we all know are often
right. The
correlated
article doesn't say increase in black population, does it?
to large communities of POC. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's just interesting to me that even with that in mind, it still bore out this way.
Yeah, the census is a funny thing because we've had it for a very long time. Like it's existed basically since our entire political system, and it's pretty much always been seen as a totally non-political, apolitical, just like purely scientific measurement of just trying to understand where the fuck people are and how to allocate representatives. But as we talked about, like, we're reaching this hyper acceleration into chaos, everything becomes political, and over recent decades, the census has become politicized more and more and more. Even the people running it are like, can we please stop? Can we please stop? So you have this big problem for the census, which is that conservatives and like psycho-libertarians will shoot census workers on site. They refuse to give out their location, even though they have cell phones that give it to private companies. They refuse to engage. They refuse to identify who they are because they don't want the government having their knowledge. But on the other hand, as Aiden, you allude to, they have real trouble going into quote-unquote dangerous neighborhoods. They have real trouble counting everyone properly in like tenements and in big low income housing. A lot of it relies on self-reporting, which is not particularly trustworthy. So the census, which is really just trying to do a pretty simple job of like, all right, who is everyone? Where is everyone? How do we allocate things? And not in like make big ethical distinctions of how we allocate resources, just how we allocate basic facts about how many people should be represented. And it's running into trouble after trouble. COVID was a huge problem. In fact, I was applying for a job to work for the census, and then fucking COVID hits. It's like, all right, well, I guess we can't really calculate this that accurately. So it's probably not even a particularly accurate census compared to other ones.
Yeah.
And it's also not that political.
Which is even besides the fact that the census, as you said, not only is subjective because it's self-reported, but it's subjective because the census workers have to kind of fit you into these categories, which were already basically based on eugenic bullshit from 100 years ago. So, like, when I was down in Maryland in a 2010 census, guy came, or whatever it was. He came and he was like, okay, what's your race? And I said, like, Greek and Jewish, I guess, is my ethnicity. He goes, well, what's your race? And he wanted me to say white. And I was like, well, I don't think of myself as white. That's not a category that means anything to me. And he was like, I'm just going to say white.
Yeah, like, well, I've just had done that acknowledgement. Yeah, I get it. Other people will think I'm white, so I answer white.
I explicitly said to him, I don't think of myself in that category, and he just put me in white.
Because he thinks of you as white, so that's good enough.
It's really just what he thought. So, like, the degree to which this is even remotely, like, scientific is just not the case. It's a subjective mixture between the person.
Parts of it are, parts of it are less.
So it's one of these things that, like, is used to try to almost give legs to racialist arguments about the composition of society, but you're just using qualitative descriptors and asserting them as quantitative.
Yeah, but keep in mind, a lot of it's not this. It's not a whole race study. Like, most of it's income, where you live. The race stuff, I agree, is weird that it's even included.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the.
Yeah, I'm saying the entirety of the census is not what's your race.
No, of course. I'm talking about in the context of asking about race. There's nothing quantitative. There's no science being done.
Also, why is the UK starting shit?
Yeah, good question.
Why are they stirring the pot? Why are they being nosy? Why do they give a shit what America's racial demographic is?
Apparently, the Daily Mail ran out of bullshit in the UK to talk about, which I find incredible.
It's impossible.
Yeah. More like the government told them to look at the US for a couple of days.
Go run a hit piece on America about how they're not white enough anymore.
Speaking of demographic threats to the United States, some of them are homegrown and some of them are white, probably. No one I know is vaccinated. Sturgis Rally bikers are coming for America.
Where is this from?
The Daily Beast. So there is as far as I can tell from, like, the picture I saw with the article, some sort of far right biker gang kind of planning specifically anti-vaccine or anti-mask or anti-health drives across the country, I think is what I gathered from this.
Are they like plague riders? They're just going around spreading COVID?
Yeah, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just yelling, witness me as they
like
cough
some
on
fucking
people.
Ghost Rider shit. We're here for Satan.
If that's the case, that's such a weird, like, declarative statement to make for that purpose of being like, vaccines are fake, no one needs them. To say, no one I know is vaccinated. It just feels like, rather than like a cool, bold statement or threat, he's just like maybe suggesting that he only associates with dumbasses, or like his social group is like super small and he doesn't really socialize much. It's, I don't know, for like a call to action. It's a very kind of weak and strange choice. But yeah, I have to kind of agree that your take has to be what it is, because I cannot interpret it in general. So I'm just going to go with what you said, because it is truly bizarre as a headline. They're coming for America.
My favorite thing about biker gangs is that even though they're almost always made up of like psycho right-wing criminals, they're very irreligious, and they love like devil shit and devil association and like shitting on the Westboro Baptist Church. So I can always appreciate them for that. But yeah, I mean the biker demographic is pretty well established in America for what it is. Very libertarian, very distrusting of government, usually criminal elements. Very white, or even if not white, they love how low class and how like shitty roots they come from are. It's a strange identity. It's almost like evil juggalos.
It's like,
but
it's like,
what are you gonna do?
It's like libertarians trying to create their own version of punk culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Except it makes no sense if you do it this way. Yeah, but yeah.
COVID can't kill me if I die from, carbon monoxide inhalation.
The devils and skulls are cool, so I guess I can agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think with all the devil shit on them too, it's almost like this is a cross between like Sons of Anarchy and like Chaos Space Marines. Like they're like the evil version of the super like Americana identities. They're like they're still super Americana,
and
but
they're
it's
honest
all,
about it.
Yeah, but it's all like evil and dark and twisted.
This is what I wish the Wyoming Cheney story is like about.
Yeah.
Like, be honest. Just say who you are. We are, we don't lie about what our political views are. We tell you explicitly what we want, explicitly why we think it's the ethical and proper direction to go. Just be honest in your worldview. Just be honest so people can assess what you have to say honest, rationally. But so much of our politics is clouded in bullshit and trying to appear couth and trying to appear good and trying to appear right. Just be bald-faced about what you're trying to say so people can honestly interact with it.
I think this is the closest we've gotten to like a cult of Nurgle in the real world. Like, these people worship the Plague Father. Like,
they love it.
Like, they're not just, I personally don't want to get vaccinated. I personally don't want to wear a mask. I personally am being a reckless dumbass with my health. They're like riders of the apocalypse to make sure other people get COVID.
And this is what I was talking about last time. We love apocalypse shit. We will voluntarily make the apocalypse look cool like Mad Max.
It's really incredible. Like, I would have never, even in all the cynicism that I've like gathered like calluses on my brain with dealing with like American right-wing people, this is bafflingly stupid.
Turns out we really are in the same place as Poland, apparently, based upon that article. Yeah.
Although, are they going around like actually disrupting vaccines, or are they just like?
Yeah, that's true. It's not as explicit as that headline. Yeah, it's a very strange kind of mutation of this anti-vax movement. This idea that we not only need to boldly proclaim our own ideals, but we need to like physically affect and threaten the lives of anyone who doesn't feel the same way, which of course we've seen with other ideologies in this kind of.
Yeah, you have to proselytize, otherwise you don't grow.
But yeah, it just like reminds me. I wish I didn't keep seeing clips and headlines about her, but a video I saw of Marjorie Taylor Greene, where I won't talk much about what she said, but one of the lines she had was basically, she was once again justifying like the same kind of anti-vax, anti-mask stuff, and it was, and also, we all die someday. Like, we don't live forever.
Yeah, I love those arguments. That's what all the NFL stars who don't want to get vaccines say, because the NFL overall,
exactly.
Relating to Herschel Walker again, because the NFL is extremely conservative, because it's mostly poor people who have no education who suddenly become millionaires and then start voting based on how they're going to get taxed. So the NFL is filled with psycho-conservatives, and so all the quarterbacks who each team depends on for their entire season are like, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to get the vaccine, because what are they going to do? Get rid of me and have no quarterback? So people like Kirk Cousins exist, and they're like, fuck it, I'll just build a plexiglass wall around me and I'll be Bubble Boy. Fuck it, you gotta die sometime, right? Oh, I'm a badass with good genetics because I'm an athlete. I can't die from COVID. Just all this, bottom of the barrel, insane conservative shit gets dug up in these people who have supreme confidence in their ignorance.
There's two things I like about the I can't die from COVID. There's three things, actually. Number one is, yes, you can. We've seen plenty of cases where young, healthy people are dying. So already on its face wrong. But let's talk about the other two. Two is, they're basically saying, I don't give a fuck if I kill other people by transmitting it. So they're explicitly saying,
their only calculation is self-interest.
I am purely an egoist.
Public health is to them like the devil.
And third, they're implicitly acknowledging the efficacy of the vaccine by making their argument not the vaccine doesn't work, but that fuck you, I'm not going to take it anyway. Which basically means they've given up the entire premise of, oh, I'm not taking the vaccine because it's a secret op and it doesn't work. It's just, I'm not taking it because fuck you.
Yeah, like, it's not even about like it might give me autism. It's just fuck you, I don't want to take your shit. Even it's free, fuck you. I can't trust anything that's free.
It's fucking incredible. Like they're kind of past the point of saying it doesn't work because like it clearly does. So now it's just like, you can't make me.
Vaccination rates in this country would go up. Well, exactly. It's all just obstinate. Vaccination rates in this country would go up if it was sold for $1 extra on the side of like a kid's meal. If you could go to McDonald's and get the vaccine side that you just self-inject right to your balls,
Yeah.
the rates would skyrocket.
No, that's what they need. They need like the viral challenge. It's like, are you man enough to inject the vaccine
Like
in
the
your
ice bucket
sack?
challenge. All the idiots did that and gave themselves shivers and a cold for a week.
I guarantee you we get like 500,000 people who would not otherwise take the vaccine if it's like you have to inject it right into your neck.
No balls.
Like, yeah. Like, do like the dumbest possible challenge, and all the people who are like, no pussy's gonna make me vaccinate.
You get all the jackass guys together, and they all take like 1,000 doses.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 in 100.
Wee Man takes it in like the brain. They make Steve-O take it while he's in like a porta potty being flung into the sky. They make like a monkey give it to Chris Pontius because he loves animals. They have someone shit it out into someone else's mouth and they get it.
Tell people, since people are already.
You want to cut that one?
Yeah, I'm considering it. Now it's almost too funny to cut.
There's already so much false info out there about side effects and such. Why don't they just put out some of their own? Like, just tell people that 0.01% of people who get it like get a half-inch extra length for their dick or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
See, to me, the greatest irony of all of COVID is that it's recently been discovered that people who get long COVID and deal with it for months and months and months have neurological disorders like were claimed vaccines give you.
Yeah.
So you literally get autism if you don't get the vaccine.
Which means they can get $23,000 by filing a claim against their renter's insurance. So that maybe that's the con. But these people are insane because they're like far right cranks. But there's no one quite as insane as parents at school board meetings.
The ultimate exercise in political power.
Cowards. Hanover school board votes against requiring masks after heated crowd of parents lashes out at a meeting.
Oh.
This is from NBC12.com.
Please don't be
which Hanover?
Please don't be New Hampshire.
I didn't determine which one. You could always check that link if you want.
Well,
exactly.
Yeah. Just a brief tangent. I don't know if you guys have been unfortunate enough to cross internet paths with Matt Walsh.
The name sounds familiar.
He's I don't want to really talk about him, but basically he's an internet crank is what I would call him. But essentially he's like a always online Twitter guy who who recently on this exact topic went to his local school board meeting apparently to fervently talk about how it's like child abuse and a violation of rights, etc., to force kids to wear masks, how it's horrible. And he homeschools his kids. So
it's not even his fucking business.
Yeah. These people just love grandstanding for the purpose of, it feels like just outrage and attention while you dig more than a half-inch deep, and it's just all hypocrisy straight to the core.
But it's not even just hypocrisy. It's like the only liberty that matters is my liberty. I don't care about your liberty. It is my liberty to fuck you over.
Which is hypocrisy.
It is my liberty to destroy your children and the group's life. These are people in 100,000 years ago, the crowd would have just beat to death with a club. And we'd be like, all right, we don't have to deal with those genetics anymore. We can move on. But because you get to live in modern day society, these people get to live. And they get to ruin other people's lives with their vitriol.
It's really incredible to me that we have parents going to a school board to become upset that the school board, which unlike the school decisions we were talking about last week, which was like, or last time rather, which is like, we're actively trying to force the kids into a cesspit in school and make sure they get COVID. For once, a school board is saying, this is probably dangerous. We need to, at the very least, make sure they're wearing masks. And the parents are getting, they're like, no. What do you mean you're going to make our kids wear masks? It would just stuff them into just like sardines.
Once again, this is a demographic issue. Depending where in the country you are, there will be either consensus buy-in or buy-out on because once again, the pandemic's been politicized, and we all know this. And this is just more and more evidence showing, yes, see, it's been politicized. Now, based on where you live or how you vote, you will get different outcome. And you know what? This is the beauty of of states' rights. The beauty of states' rights is that we can do experiments on a state level. And you know what will happen? People from certain states will have brain dead children who all got COVID. Some people in states where the kids get vaccines and wear masks will be fine. And then there will be a whole new political generation of people of red states who have political resentment that they were the ones who didn't get the vax and are now like retarded and have to deal with it. That's the future, folks. The next political generation is the generation under Zoomers who all got long COVID fog brain and are voting on that block now.
To briefly compare and contrast to one of the few good articles, I'm just going to tell you because it's not hard to figure out. Here's another article on basically the exact same topic. This one's from courierjournal.com. Quote, kids are not immortal, end quote. Kentucky Governor Beshear issues mask mandate for schools.
This person should be in a mental hospital. Like they're clearly like a vicious sociopath of some sort. How I feel like I live on a different planet. How do those words come out of your mouth, let alone that of any kind of authority figure who has any kind of influence? Like, I bet this guy is. This guy is pro-life too.
Like, well, no. He's saying kids are not immortal.
Oh, I assume.
I think Aiden is the other way around.
No. This is one of the good ones.
I guess my brain is so fucked and flipped after just 3 articles that I was already on the thing like. No, I was reading this like kids are not immortal. Like they're gonna die anyways. So. Put them at risk.
Who cares if they die at 6 or 90?
That's great. It's like kids aren't going to live that long anyway.
Yeah, like, because it's what we're saying about adults right now anyways sometimes on the right side of things.
Well, the context clues is what saves it because then it says they're issuing mask mandates.
Yeah, I mean, one of the funnier things that's actually like the grain of truth in bullshit often is that, a lot of the claims of ageism have this root in making utilitarian decisions about who gets to live and die. And so we as humans have this natural aversion to seeing like kids getting sick or kids getting hurt or kids dying or kids being killed because we know at a genetic level this is our future, this is our progeny, this is our only legacy we have. And then we laugh at like old people dying because fuck them, they're old, they need to die already. So we have this genetic predisposition to like dispose of old people and freak the fuck out about young people. And so it's kind of funny seeing this happen in real time. Where, there's a lot of fraud stuff like, think of the children. Oh, but my children are safe because they got all the diseases young and now they've got good immune systems. One, parents don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Parents are not scientists. They don't understand genetics and health. But 2, like, as Aiden is saying, like, we're so quick to disregard the lives of old people. Like, fuck, you can't drive. You're too old. Your vision's shit. Views are shitty. Go die. Or, go voluntarily die. Which is what has really been happening in America in the last year. And just this insane overreaction to children. Oh, we have to, on both sides, really, of like, we have to give the kids these untested things, and then like, oh, we can't let the kids breathe their own air because they'll die from that. It's crazy how all these fights, just like every like YouTube fight, every source of drama in the world resorts to like, think of the kids. That's why it's such a good go-to line. Because it's all we really care about in our stupid monkey brain.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's both been politicized and twisted, but also I at least think has a lot of validity. I mean, whether you're talking about, I guess, genetic predisposition or programming, or you're just talking about things like defense, how defenseless people are at that age and can't.
Right, because they can't really make their own decisions.
Right, yeah. Or I guess if you want to be weird about things, potentiality, like they have their whole life ahead of them. But I don't really want to go down that route because that's not really, I think, as valid an argument. It's kind of bizarre how much kids are held up. I guess not bizarre because you can clearly see the logic of doing it because it's so persuasive, as you say, Jason. But it is it's pretty, I think, upsetting to see these children who are probably
used as props by their parents for political gain
and are probably being, many of them, loaded with a lifetime of trauma with the events of this last now almost 2 years.
Absolutely.
And they're just being held up as shields basically for the absurdities or
contradictions, as you point out.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Alex.
We are very rapidly approaching a point and this is kind of a joke, but not really, Republicans will be anti-abortion and pro-infanticide. I just want to point
pop
that
out
out.
first.
Just literally the instant they are born, we no longer respect their right to life.
Just finish the bake.
We only respect unborn life. That is where we're headed towards right now.
Well, if you're Christian, absolutely, because the only life that's pure is untouched life.
Yeah.
As soon as you're actually born to the earth, you're now a guilty sinner. But my point, there's an article I want to do maybe a deep dive on next time, which is kind of interesting. It was an article in the Wall Street Journal, which is called "The Case Against Masking Children."
Yeah.
And it's not a totally bullshit case. There are some interesting arguments, and there are others that are total horseshit. So, as with most arguments, there's some have merit, some parts have merit, some do not. But I want to mostly like it because the art on it's hilarious, and I'll show you next time. But and it's also written by a total crank who just on like a clock, like occasionally makes some interesting points that actually could be explored by someone who's not an idiot, and there's some merit to them. But yeah, I mean, you're certainly right that like children are now just the pawns on the chessboard. Children are now, they're not the knight or the rook making any big important move. They're just our fodder. They're our fodder to get what we want for both sides. Or not both sides, any side. Literally any side. Environmentalists will make arguments using children. Socialists will make arguments using the children in the future. Everyone does because it's so easy.
Well, fortunately, it's not always, framed in these Republican frame sets of conspiracy theory and children being wiped out and it's your right to die. Sometimes we have responsible politicians making sure that our corporate overlords keep us vaccinated. Specifically, Biden to meet with CEOs requiring their employees get vaccinated, urge others to follow their lead. From CNN.com. I promise this is the last COVID one, by the way.
Yeah, I have long COVID from this now. I'm tired of this.
So to the pushback to the Republicans is Biden is going to give CEOs even another tool of power.
Yeah, they already have this. They already can restrict all your rights when you voluntarily get a job.
But it's to me, this one was just remarkable because it was like the naked distillation of what conservative Democrats are, which is make sure that every single thread of the mechanics of like what should be the welfare state and the mechanics of the survival of the populations they govern is bound up not in the control of the central government. It's bound up in the control of some CEO.
Think about it, Alex. This is actually ideologically consistent. If the government can't solve public health, maybe the corporate world can.
Mm-hmm. It's literally privatizing the survival of the species.
Our government's so ineffective that, like, yeah, of course, the government can't solve problems. Only corporations can. That's the dark capitalist future we're going to live in. Only the corporation knows best. Not even the government knows best. And see, this is what conservatives are going to lose their minds over, because it won't be the government anymore. It won't be Big Brother telling you how to live your life. It'll be big corporations. And then Republicans who are pro-corporation are going to have a real reckoning. It's like, are we now anarchists? Are we now socialists? Do we now hate corporations? Do we now dissolve capitalism to maintain our insane freedom? That's the big future split amongst conservatives. Once the actual government goes away.
They'll just be like, oh, this company is being too woke. It's like that they're already pulling out that playbook time and time again.
They'll replace woke with something else, like live. They're being too live.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously, I want as many people to get vaccinated as possible, but yeah, it's just the complete abdication of responsibility. I mean, that's almost too charitable because there's an intentionality behind this and an adherence to the status quo and passing this off to powerful corporations. And yeah, like they're gonna demand this of their employees maybe, but they're not gonna offer them like paid time off to do it or anything like that. They're not going to do anything to make this easy and accessible or really do this in any reasonable way. And even as you started by saying, at the root of it, there's the problem of, yes, adding another point of leverage that they don't really need, as Jason also pointed out. They already control your health and insurance, your wages, also potentially your ability to get future jobs if you ever choose to leave.
Yeah, they already track all your behavior and market to you ads they know you'll like. I mean, not to go too much into the NFL again, but this is, it's football season, everyone. There's a preseason game going on right now.
Supposed to be a sports corner.
But the reason this is important is because, so for example, the NFL barely got through last year. The vaccines were not really out. As I said, NFL stars are generally conservative psychos who think they know better about health than everyone. I mean, look at Tom Brady, who's even fairly apolitical, and he's like a psycho health guru. My point is, the NFL this year is like, look, if you get vaccinated, we won't test you every day. If you get vaccinated, good things happen. You won't lose any game. You won't have any games forfeited. If you're not vaccinated, we test you every single day with a PCR test. You can't travel everywhere. You can't go with the team on, the unvaccinated team on the flight over to your next game. So corporations, which even are, loosely, is it clear whether they're employees, are they contractors, are providing incentives for getting vaccinated. Some of them are actual, like, monetary incentives. Others are, like, punitive incentives. Like, if you don't get vaccinated, X, Y, Z will happen. There's risks and threats to how your team's success will be. So people are making the argument like, look, just treat it like steroids. Just use it as a performance enhancer. Like you do anything else for the team beforehand, why not get the COVID vaccine, because it'll help your team maybe win more games. But my point is, there is already a fraught relationship between employer-employee / contractor-contractee about what are your actual rights, what can they force you to do, what can they request you to do, what can they incentivize you to do, and that's just fun watching it play out in real time.
It's just incredible to me trying to get like the free market to regulate people's health. This is something that is almost by definition a for-profit industry, where everything is done to the least possible necessary safety and security to maximize profits. And we're now asking a government whose entire purpose is the safety and well-being of its population as its foundational premise to convince not the people that it has that power and will use that power to keep them safe, but that it will intentionally abnegate that power and give it to a bunch of completely untrustworthy kleptocrat, mostly 100 millionaires and billionaires, who will then be your sort of local tyrant and feudal overseer in a very direct and unambiguous way. And all of this is to say, why are we doing this? Well, part of it's the reason Aiden mentioned about, like, diffusal responsibility. But I think as much as anything else, it's because Americans have a fetish where, like, they despise the idea of government to a degree where it's like anything that regulates us is tyranny. But we have absolutely no qualms about tyranny by corporation.
Yeah, exactly. The fetish, as you say, from the conservatives, is just that it's not the government doing it. Now, I have a question. Has Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos tweeted anything about vaccines?
Elon Musk thinks it's fake. Elon Musk basically tweeted he thinks COVID's like a hoax.
All right, well, that's horrible. But my point is this. If a billionaire told America to get the vaccine, more people would do it than if the president told America to get the vaccine. Because that's just where we're at. Where we respect the accrual of resources and wealth more than the accrual of political power. And people even make fun of Biden for being one of the poorest presidents and not being enough of a money-grubbing grifter throughout his political career. And people on, like, libs respect Nancy Pelosi because she's worth like $400 million. Like, she's a grinder. She's doing all them investments and paying off. Like, she's a boss bitch.
I would take a random guy on Grindr to run our country over Nancy Pelosi.
Well, yeah, sure. But my point is, we have such a strong aversion to the government doing anything, even if it's a good thing, even if it's a thing we all acknowledge is good. Because, like, well, we know the government will fuck it up somehow. And yet, corporations who ruin and enslave our lives on a daily basis, that's cool, because you know what? They're doing it for profit. It's why people love Trump. Because Trump's like, I'm going to make the government for profit. And they're like, yeah, we love this shit.
Yeah.
We just love profit, because we're the corpus. If anyone's played Warframe, America are the corpus. Our religion is money. Christianity's gone. Loving the government is gone. Loving Big Brother, gone. We just love money. So if anyone does anything on behalf of money, we respect it. That's the American ethos.
Well, fortunately, every place that capitalism has touched has made more of these virtuous millionaires. And sometimes they get a little rowdy, and that's fun. This is more of a joke article. We don't really have to discuss at length, but Russian millionaire admits killing man he, quote, mistook for bear. This is in BBC.
It's an honest mistake.
See, I thought it was going to be like that famous article, like, I kill because I can. then they feel bad about it. Like, what's that article? They have that book that's very famous. It's like a shitty book to dunk on like the morality of being an atheist.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's a very famous book. You know what I'm talking about, audience. You're smart.
I do find it amazing that the Russians would even kill a bear, though, considering that half of them like live with them in corrals in their backyard.
Yeah, but not if one that's like wild is trying to kill you.
Yeah.
This reminds me of I think I saw the story last year. Did you guys see this about South Dakota Attorney General who, quote unquote, said that he thought he'd hit a deer and then returned to the scene later and it was like investigated and it turned out that he hit a man and I believe killed him. So yeah, all across the world where capitalism thrives, where oligarchies exist, cool murders are going on.
It's really great. I didn't really have much to talk about that. I just thought it was fantastic. We do, however, have at least one country looking out for the mental health and the stability of the world, and that's Israel.
Oh, I want to guess. I was gonna guess Israel though.
You would have guessed. According to the Times of Israel, Israel said to warn CIA chief that new Iranian president is mentally disturbed. There's so much going on here, and I really love every part of it.
I mean, in the era of Trump, why does anyone give a fuck?
Yeah.
We're all disturbed. We've all gone crazy.
Yeah, but
does Israel get to 25th Amendment other countries' leaders?
Listen, Jason, the difference is that Iran may be developing nuclear weapons. Trump didn't have nuclear. Oh wait, no, never mind.
Israel doesn't have 08.
Certainly, Israel doesn't.
Korea doesn't want 08.
Yeah. I do. My favorite part about this really is the implication that the CIA doesn't know. Like that Israel's coming to the Central Intelligence Agency, the like probably the best.
You're telling me this guy is crazy?
The best funded and most bloated apparatus of American imperialism, short of the military, and the Israelis are going to come to him and be like, "You may not know this. You know, we have some bad news."
Yeah,
our mortal enemy is a dingbat.
He just like sidles up to him in the canteen, in the cafeteria, and he's like, "Hey, did you hear the gossip?
Yeah,
that new president's like,
I'm spilling tea on Iran."
Yeah,
I don't think the CIA was spending enough time figuring out what's going on in Iran. That's not their objective.
No. They barely care about it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can't get straight what the UFOs are for. I think they don't understand what earthly shit is.
But they're taking it seriously now.
Yeah. I mean, the CIA has never even been involved in any coups or toppling or maintaining of regimes in Iran. So, like, why would they care now?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't really understand why Israel is even sharing this. They don't really care about Iran either. They've never done anything in that country, have they?
They've never sent computer viruses to blow up nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
The most like metal shit ever.
They've never sent a battle bot to assassinate a scientist.
Yeah. It's crazy how all those missile strikes just keep appearing out of nowhere and killing scientists and politicians.
Battle bot.
That's really funny.
That's basically what it was. It was an unmanned like machine gun car.
There's just
but now I can just imagine like Ziggo and Toro flipping on a person.
But I also
biohazard.
I like the disrespect for the Iranian public that's like they voted for a man with like schizophrenia. Like because the implication is that he's got like a DSM-5 like an actual literal mental disorder. Like they've talked to his therapist like unethically and determined this. Like it's not like, oh, he's a radical. Like they usually say bullshit that's like he's fringe or he's part of he's a totalitarian or like the hardliners. Like they use these terms that are coded for like people we don't like with bad politics.
You know how it's a conservative meme that like being a lib is like a brain disease?
Yeah.
I can't wait for like the Trump DSM where being a lib is an actual brain disease.
Yeah.
Being from Iran is a brain disease.
I can't wait to see what specifically they say this guy has.
He's a furry or something, is what they claim.
He's a narcissist.
That's the new direction. Yeah. The Iranian like Supreme Court of like Ayatollahs is like, we are now all furries. It is, women must wear the hijab and men must wear the fursuit. It must be either a tanuki suit or a traditional Islamic donkey outfit. Like,
I mean,
I don't
I
even
just
know.
learned about tanukis. They're awesome.
Yeah, I don't know.
Also, they don't have huge nuts. Japanese people are just crazy.
That got me.
That's good shit. Where was that headline from?
That was from Times of Israel. I'll link it.
My favorite website.
But to contrast with the completely insane Israeli articles, this one's, I wouldn't say it's good, but it's better. This is from Haaretz.com. To stave off opposition to settlement expansion, Bennett gives rare approval for 800 Palestinian homes.
Well, this headline's too complicated. To stave off opposition, people who oppose settlement expansion, he's cutting them off by saying, here's our little carrot, 800 homes.
Yeah.
That will then just blow up next year.
Yeah, we'll bulldoze them in 2 years. Yeah, exactly.
It's like a lease on a house.
Huh. Yeah, so do you guys read this as like that approval is approval to prevent Israeli settlers from taking homes, or like scoping out a spot where they're gonna like throw together some new homes?
No, if I had to guess, it's the Israeli government has signed a giant bloated construction contract to an Israeli construction company to build 800 homes that we joked they will blow up in 2 years.
That's what I was wondering is if that's the case. Obviously,
I'm not joking about that. That's
not really great because that's not really the issue at hand. But
no, of course not. Yeah. What I liked about this one compared to the usual bullshit articles that we get is it actually makes some effort at explaining the political maneuvering and nuance of the situation. Because there were a whole bunch of articles on this exact topic, and most of them were like, Bennett is a cool, awesome dude who's so good to the Palestinians.
And this is the new Israeli PM,
who's a massive piece of shit, by the way. He's basically the same as Netanyahu.
It's just not Netanyahu.
Yeah, he's just a dumber, less competent Netanyahu who somehow is replacing him.
Like, I'm not Bush, trust me.
Yeah. So at least in this headline, we get the indication that this is a political power ploy to enable the continued settlements, right? It's at least acknowledging that, which is almost that's like a really remarkable acknowledgement in this period of Israeli politics where everyone's like super fucking black-pilled on like settlements have to happen and there's no real two-state solution anymore.
Yeah.
So it's really remarkable that anyone would even mention that this is just bullshit.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Do you know anything about this publication? Have you ever visited it before?
Well, there's a bunch of different Israeli publications that range from what we consider like Fox to what we consider like,
Yeah, that's why I was asking. I was curious because
I think they are one of the like centrist to center left within whatever that means in Israel.
Yeah, it's always weird when like you see a glimmer of honesty in this industry that is all mongering monsters, and it's not refreshing, but it's like bizarre. It's almost out of place.
Yeah,
it's like Twilight Zone.
I would have it could be also a grace period, I guess, because he's new in power.
But on their honeymoon with him.
Yeah, and they don't want to sow discontent quite yet. But yeah, I during like the recent very public documentation and journalism about the Palestinian Israeli conflict, if you want to put it in those lovely vague terms.
I would call it the Israeli-Palestinian dunking.
Sure. Dunking, apartheid, conflict, whatever you want to call it. Like I saw plenty of pieces that were like just like Netanyahu, from Israeli sources that were just like Netanyahu weak, should be killing more Palestinians. So
exactly.
I could
pussy bitch Netanyahu can't hold the government if he doesn't kill more people.
If I Google this issue, I would be curious to see if there are still headlines like that, like Bennett weak makes concessions to
by conservative Israelis. Absolutely.
Yeah.
America and Israel are the only countries in the world that like are on this side of the issue.
It's basically framed like the stereotypical like overbearing parent, like Jewish parent or Asian parent that's like, you killed 800 Palestinians, why not 1,000?
Why not 100? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, what? Like there's not even a sense.
You get a
that
B-
like,
for your latest color.
Yeah, not only is it not unethical, it's unethical not to do it as much as possible. Because somehow not killing civilians means abandoning the security of Israel in almost every framing of this problem in Israeli papers. So Haaretz being basically the one of the few sort of vaguely left papers they have. I occasionally have an article like this that I'm like, all right, they're trying. They're doing something. They're not stopping it, but they're talking about it at least.
It would be so funny to me if if like some super fanatic conservative Israeli prime minister comes to power and decides to start like treating Italian people the same as they treat Palestinians for being descendants of the Roman Empire. That would be just
if the Italian mob and the Israeli mob start going at it in Israel,
Yeah.
because that would be like
Isn't that the plot of Lucky Number 11?
Yeah, exactly. Who's gonna be Lucky Number 7? Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Yeah,
and then Morgan Freeman shows up.
Yeah.
All right, let's move forward.
Shoot these motherfuckers! All right. Last article. This is just a fun one.
The threads are telling them to kill the Palestinians.
This is just a fun one. I just want your opinion. Like, what is this about? Crabtivating, chemical in plastic, arousing hermit crabs.
I think it's just a bad pun to try and say like captivating.
No, I know, but like,
yeah.
Why is this a story in USA Today?
Okay. Unironically, this is the Alex Jones returning the frogs gay. The chemicals in the plastic are making the crabs horny. Cool, I love it. Great.
But my question is, why do we need to know this?
Why do we need to know that chipmunks have bubonic plague? Because we do, Alex. It's the news that's fit to print.
This author's partner definitely left them for a horny hermit crab. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been loving the goat fuckers lately, but this is where we're at.
Hide your kid, hide your wife. These crabs are fucking.
Okay, here's what it is.
Pinching everyone.
It's like a crazy homeschooling parent who doesn't want to have to buy their kid a hermit crab, who then like sprouts a dong or like starts boning down.
We can't get this.
Kids can't see the hermit crabs fucking.
It's too aroused.
Now,
very aroused.
Hermit crabs are the ones that shift shells, right?
Yeah.
Is this just another attack on indigent people? That's what I want. That's just what I want to establish.
It's super coded. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's too much public sex in the homeless community, but they can't write that article. So they're like,
or it's like an anti-Roma people article.
Yeah.
That's the best thing
ever. The most dense dog whistling of all time. Mm-hmm. Even the dog's like, I don't get it.
Yeah, like the dog is like running around chasing his tail. Like I have no idea what this whistle was.
The dog is now aroused.
It's like too clever by half on the dog whistle, and no one knows what's going on. Yeah.
It's also just one of these like pop science articles. Like, hey, look, the hermit crabs animals are cool and totally apolitical, and I know this article really should be about like how corporations are horribly polluting the world by dumping all their evil, disgusting chemicals into our streams and water supplies and just nature preserves and like destroying speciation. But cool, isn't this a funny story?
Also, the pun doesn't even really make sense. What does captivating have to do with what follows? It should be like, I don't know, shellacious or something like that.
Yes. So here's what really matters: making the initial pun better.
Yeah. That's what's important to me.
Crabby no more. But what I actually like,
hermit.
Exactly. This was a very carefully constructed headline in my mind to pit environmentalism against itself by saying, "What do you want more? No pollution or repopulation of hermit crabs?"
I don't think environmentalists give a shit if crabs are horny.
Well, I'm just saying, more horny crabs means more crabs. They're doing
but
it every
who knows?
day.
The hermit crabs are like an invasive species that make it harder for other life. Environmentalism is not a singular. Let every being live more, have more of every animal. The environmentalist argument for cows is we need to have fewer cows.
No, of course.
Factory farming them, we'll have millions fewer, which is better for their health.
Broadly speaking, environmentalists tend to also support, preventing the extinction of species.
And broadly speaking, most people are fucking idiots.
Well, all right.
Got him. We live in a society, Alex.
1,000 IQ take.
Sure, this is going, but
explain yourself.
you really own me with that zinger.
I yield the rest of my time.
Fuck. Right, exactly. It's fucking impossible to come back. Outstanding move. I think that will do it for this week. We've kind of lost the plot, but that's fine because there wasn't much plot to begin with.
What plot? It's all improv, baby.
I think we will let you go this time with a short one, but Be sure to tune in next time for another episode of the pod, and we'll have hopefully just as much fun as this one.
Please, God, let it be more. This is so dark.
What a great time.
I'm melting. Oh, we didn't say bye.
Yeah, we're waiting for you to do it.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential-workers-podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.